this time, John Mark was a youngster, a young teenager. He was at the house in Jerusalem on the night of the Last Supper. How do we know this? Well, we know it by carefully reading Mark's own account of that night and the arrest of Jesus in Gethsemane. It reads this: "And immediately, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now his betrayer had given them a signal, saying, 'Whoever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him and lead him away safely.' And as soon as he had come, immediately he went up to Jesus, and he said to him, 'Rabbi, Rabbi,' and he kissed him. Then they laid their hands on him and took him. And one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus answered and said to the crowd, 'Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and with clubs to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you didn't seize me then, but the scriptures must be fulfilled.' And they all forsook him, and his disciples fled." He goes on to say, "Now a certain young man had followed them, having a linen cloth thrown around his naked body. And the soldiers laid hold of the young man, and the young man left and fled. Leaving the linen cloth, he fled naked." Well, there really can be no other explanation than this was Mark saying, "I was there." This story only appears in the Gospel of Mark. He was saying, "I witnessed it." As a youngster, he'd watched the proceedings in the upper room from a distance. He'd seen them leave for Gethsemane. He'd grabbed a shawl and he'd sneaked out, but he'd fled terrified of being caught up in the arrest.
Let's just dive in and you'll see how it unfolds. After the opening line, Mark begins with a quotation from the ancient prophets Isaiah and Malachi, who said that God would send a messenger to Israel to prepare them for when God would show up himself to rescue his people and become their king. And Mark introduces John the Baptist as that messenger, and then right when you expect God to show up personally, Mark introduces Jesus. And as he comes onto the scene, the heavens open, God's Spirit descends on Jesus, and God says, "You are my beloved Son." After this, Mark places in front of us a summary of Jesus' core message. He went about Galilee announcing the good news that God's kingdom has come near. Jesus is carrying forward the story from the Old Testament scriptures about God's rescue operation for his world. Through Jesus, God is restoring his reign over the world by confronting and defeating evil and its hold on people's lives, and then by inviting them to live under his reign by following Jesus. From here, Mark's given us a big block of stories showing us Jesus' power as he brings God's kingdom. He goes about healing people whose bodies are sick or broken or under the oppression of dark spiritual powers. And Jesus even does something that for Jewish people only God has the right to do. He forgives people's sins. And Jesus' actions here produce lots of different responses. So some people follow him and become his disciples. Other people don't know what to think, and still others reject him completely, especially Israel's leaders who accuse him of blaspheming God and being empowered by evil.